If, like me, you're thinking of building an ADU, there are three things you'll want to know. Would the building code allow it? How much would it cost? And would it be a good investment? The good news is that at a state level, the rules have become very relaxed. The bad news is there are still some rules in Sonoma County that can trip you up, which is what happened to me nearly 5 years ago. If you watch the end of this video, I'll tell you why building an ADU makes a good investment, even if you have no interest in renting it out. If you're new to this channel, my name is David Hargreaves, a top 5 realtor in Healdsburg, one half of the Brewington Hargreaves team. As a team, we're one of the top 1% of teams in Sonoma County. But less about us. Let's dive into ADUs, what the rule changes are, what the requirements are for an ADU, what the process is to build one, and why so many people are currently building them. But before we go any further, let's just define what an ADU is. An ADU stands for accessory dwelling unit, which is allowed on any lots that have an existing or a proposed primary residence. You can only ever have 2 living structures, a primary and then an accessory living structure. You can obviously have other structures like, a studio or a barn or an office. There are a few specifications for ADUs which are fairly consistent between Sonoma County and different city jurisdictions, which, the main things are as follows. 1,200 square feet is the maximum size. The kitchen and the bathroom must meet the code requirements, and the ADU can be no taller than 16 feet. So those are the main sort of requirements. Obviously, it needs a bedroom. I should say that while the maximum size is 1,200 square feet, most ADUs are actually considerably smaller than that. In fact, I recently sold a development in Healdsburg that had 500 square foot ADUs, which to be honest, they were amazing. They were a great example of exactly how you can make an ADU work that size, and it works incredibly well, both aesthetically and also functionally. So let's talk about, what these rule changes have been. It goes back to 2017 that the rules around building ADUs were first relaxed at a California state level. But then a few years later, Gavin Newsom signed additional legislation that came into effect in 2020 and 2021 to make it simpler for homeowners to build ADUs. It made many of the building restrictions imposed at a local level obsolete and really helped streamline the actual process for building one. So what were the 7 key rule changes? The first one was owner occupancy was no longer required. So there's no longer a requirement for a property owner to live in the primary home or the ADU in order to build one. This is key to the state achieving its goal of, creating more affordable housing through the building of ADUs. The second rule change is that homeowners associations, they can't block an ADU. So as long as your property is zoned for a single family home, you can now build and rent out an ADU regardless of what an HOA says. Similarly, in a city such as Healdsburg, where many of the homes in the downtown area are subject to, historic preservations, the city of Healdsburg, they can't prevent an ADU being built in a historic district. So you can see these things make a big impact on the overall ease with which it is to build an ADU. So the third thing is, there are no lot coverage rules. Many cities have got rules around the percentage area of a lot that can be covered by dwelling structures. For example, in Healdsburg, the lot coverage is limited to between 25 and 50% of the lot, depending on the overall size of the lot, as well as other factors such as the width of the lot. The change in the rules at a state level means that no jurisdiction can prevent the building of an ADU of 850 square feet or less due to the ADU taking the percentage coverage of the lot over the city limit. This is one reason you see ADUs on properties that, they look like they're disproportionately big for the lot. Like I can think of a few in Healdsburg, for example. This is one reason you see, as you walk around a town like Healdsburg, you see ADUs on properties that look like they're disproportionately large for the lot. I could definitely show you a few in Healdsburg. The fourth rule change at the state level was reducing the overall setback requirements. So California has mandated that setback requirements for ADUs are reduced to just 4 feet. This is typically less than standard sort of rear and side setbacks in both Sonoma County and many cities. As you look at ADUs, you'll start to notice just how close ADUs are to the sidewalk or to the neighbour's fence. A primary home could never be built as close to lot lines as some of these ADUs. The fifth change was reducing fees. So for ADUs smaller than 750 square feet, local agencies are no longer allowed to charge impact fees. These are the one-time fees that are often imposed on a developer to offset the impact of building on public infrastructure. And these fees can really mount up. So local agencies, they can still charge fees for larger ADUs, but they're required to be in line with the square footage of the ADU as a percentage of the overall primary residence. So to give you an idea of the cost of some of these fees, in Sonoma County they're typically between $16,000 and $24,000 depending on the size of the ADU. In a city like Healdsburg, for example, the charges are just under, I think it's about $15,000 for an ADU which is greater than 850 square feet. So the sixth change was speeding up the whole permitting process. California put in place a maximum timescale for the processing of permits, which I think was originally set at 120 days, but has now been reduced to down to as little as 60 days. If you've ever been through a permit process in Sonoma County, 60 days is rapid. If only there were the same requirements on all permits. Maybe one day. The seventh rule change is one around parking restrictions. If you build an ADU in an existing garage or a carport or other parking structure, you no longer need to provide replacement parking space. You're also not subject to providing additional parking if the unit is within a half-mile walking distance of public transit, or is part of an existing primary residence, or in fact is in a historic district. So parking is not normally an issue in more rural settings, but for example in downtown Healdsburg, the previous requirement to provide additional parking definitely prevented a lot of people from building ADUs. If you want to be kept up to date with articles about building, remodeling or improving your home, please subscribe to my regular newsletter. I'll put a link in the description below. So we've talked a little bit about the rules, but there are some important limitations in Sonoma County. While there are very few restrictions for building an ADU in a city, there are definitely some things that you need to think about in a more rural Sonoma County setting. So for example, particularly if you're not on public water and sewer. So the first requirement concerns the well. For each dwelling on a property in a lower water area, a well must produce a minimum of 1 gallon per minute per structure. So if you are on a well and are building an ADU, you'll need to conduct a dry weather well test between, I think it's mid-July to the 1st of October, to demonstrate that you've got sufficient water to build the accessory structure. And as I say, you need 1 gallon per minute per structure. So if you've got a primary residence and are building an ADU, you'll need a total of minimum of 2 gallons per minute. If you don't have that, you won't be allowed to build an ADU. The next requirement concerns septic systems. Because septic systems are designed to support a certain number of bedrooms, if you build an ADU, which it must have a bedroom, you'll need to ensure that the septic system supports the number of additional bedrooms in the ADU. So for example, if you've got a house that has 3 bedrooms with a 3-bedroom septic system and you want to build an ADU, you'll have to upgrade your septic system to a 4-bed system to support the extra bedroom of the ADU. Alternatively, you can go through a process to redesignate one of the bedrooms in the main house as an office, for example, and so then use the 3rd bedroom capacity of the septic system to support the bedroom in the ADU. And that's just a process you would have to go through with the county. And it's not an uncommon process, but you just need to be aware that doing so, it will definitely negatively impact the value of the main home, although you'll clearly be adding value by adding an ADU. So those are just things that you need to take a look at. So the third restriction covers a Z, or Z as I would say, combining district, and also Williamson Act properties. In Sonoma County there's a zone called the Z combining zone, where ADUs just are not permitted to be built because of, it could be natural hazards, it could be public safety, could be, maybe more likely water scarcity or water quality issues. This is the situation that I ran into in 2016, which prevented me from being able to build an ADU. The good news is that in 2019, 1,900 parcels got removed from this designation, but it's definitely something that you need to watch out for if you are thinking of, buying a property that is in one of these Z combining districts, because you wouldn't be allowed to build an ADU. The same is true for Williamson Act properties. ADUs can only be built in the designated building envelope, which is outside of the Williamson Act designation. So that's enough about rules. How much do they actually cost to build? This is always a really hard question to answer, because it just depends on so much on the quality, and particularly the quality of the finishes of the ADU. There was actually a study done in April 2021 which surveyed nearly 1,000 people who recently built an ADU. The median cost of construction for those people who'd built an ADU in the Bay Area was $177,500. This equates to $329 per square foot for the ADU they built. I personally feel this number is quite low. If you are thinking of budgeting to build one, I think you'd be wise to budget a minimum of $400 per square foot, just to be on the safe side. There are of course lots of companies that are promoting prefab ADUs as a cheaper and faster solution to building an ADU. However, I've definitely found with a lot of these companies, the actual cost, it may be a little bit cheaper, but it's not that much cheaper than doing a regular stick build. The big advantage is that you know exactly what you're going to spend up front, so there are not going to be any big surprises when you get to the end of the project. And it'll definitely be, almost certainly quicker to build it. If you want to know more about, the pros and cons of prefab and interviews with architects and contractors, subscribe to my monthly newsletter. I'll put a link down below. So why are people building ADUs? Well, I've got a number of clients who've either bought homes with an ADU or have built an ADU to enhance the property. From my experience, the reasons tend to fall into one of 5 different categories. The first is that they want to expand the accommodation of the home for their own personal use, and they see an ADU as the best way to do it, but also knowing it will add significant to the value to the home, compared to expanding the footprint of the main home. The second category of person is, somebody who wants to create a way to earn income from the property and potentially offset the cost of the mortgage. You may be surprised to know that, I've got a client in downtown Healdsburg who's got an ADU which is, I don't think it's any more than 500 square feet, and they rent it out for $3,200 per month. So it's a significant income. In some cases, there's not even a financial need for the owner to rent the ADU out, but they do so because it then enables them to purchase a property as a qualifying 1031 exchange. So there's lots of different reasons that people are attracted to ADUs. The third reason is, a number of my clients looking for a home with an ADU or looking to build one so that they can, house an aging relative or just thinking about themselves as they get older and future-proofing their home for their own needs. By building an ADU as they age, they'll have the ability to have a caretaker live with them, in a separate unit. The fourth category of buyer, probably at the other end of the scale, are young couples who are looking for a place for a nanny to stay because of the challenges of, finding accommodation for a nanny that they can afford. And then the final category of ADU owners are quite simply investors. A single family home with an ADU can make a great investment. That's why a number of properties in, for example, the City 44 and Kerry Ranch developments in Santa Rosa, which my brokerage is selling, they've been purchased by investors. For $900,000 you can buy a single family home plus an ADU and get a combined, $5,500 income a month. So why does it make sense to build an ADU even if you don't need the income or the extra space? The reason is homes with ADUs sell for disproportionately more money and sell faster than homes without an ADU. The reason is simple. Once you come to sell your home with an ADU, you'll not only be selling a home, with a shiny new ADU, let's not forget buyers love new construction, but you will also open the potential pool of buyers for your home up to a much wider audience, including investors, people with aging parents or people excited about the possibility of additional income. So if you are thinking of investing in ADU or looking to buy or sell a home with an ADU, please do email me at david@brewingtonhargreaves.com. If you enjoyed this video, you might also enjoy my video about the cost of building in Sonoma County, and I'll put a link to that below. Until the next video, go well.